The final part that we're going to do with this data set is to look at these final three values of calculating the range, the variance, and the standard deviation for this sample of students. In order to do the range, it's a very simple calculation. It's simply the highest score minus the lowest score. So in this case, I can put my cursor here in this box. I can hit enter. My data is already sorted from low to high. So I'm going to take my high value and I'm going to subtract my lowest value, and there's the range for my data. The variance and the standard deviation, on the other hand, are a little bit more complicated to calculate. So I'm going to move over to another tab of this worksheet here, and you'll see I've got calculations. What I've got here is now back in my student order. I've got students' test scores. When you are calculating the variance, you are looking for the sum of each data point, the distance it is away from the mean, and you're squaring that, otherwise we'd end up with a zero variance. And then you're going to take that over the number of items there are in your data set minus 1. So let's go back here for a second. So I've got my data. We've already calculated the mean, so I'm just going to look at that number there, 205.4. and come back here. I'm going to put my 205.4 in one cell here, and now I'm simply going to drag down this cursor, and that will copy that value here. I now need to take and figure out for each student's score how far away from the mean was that. In order to do that, it's a subtraction problem, so I'm going to do equals, and then I'm going to take the score minus the mean. Okay, you'll see in this case it's a negative, others will be positive, and that's indeed why we're doing a difference squared in the next step. So now I'll select that, and again I'm going to drag down. This time it will paste the formula, not the value, which is exactly what I want. In the next field over, I'm going to say equals, and now I want to square the difference, so I'm taking whatever value I found there, I'm going to multiply with an asterisk by the same value, and then I hit enter. Again, if I drag this down, the spreadsheet will know that I want to square each of the values that was in column D. You can check that by seeing D4 times D4. Indeed, that's in the D4 range. Okay, so I've now got my difference squared, okay, for each of those. So now, according to my formula, I need to now create a sum of those. Range we calculated on the last one, so now I want my sum. So I'm going to hit equal, and I'm going to write sum. It will pull that up, and again I want the sum of my difference squared. So I'll select those, and I'll have it calculate. Now, going back to our formula again, in order to find the variance, I need to divide by the number of pairs minus 1, or the number of data points minus 1. So here's what it ends up being, 902.3 divided by, in this case, 20 minus 1, or 19. Okay, so for this I'll do equals this value divided by, with a slash, 19, enter. I get 47.49. The final step, the final calculation I want to do is I want to figure out what the standard deviation is, because the variance is looking at over the whole sample, and I want to now figure out the standard deviation. The standard deviation is the square root of the variance, so for that I'm simply going to do another equal sign, and this time if I start to type the word square, you'll see I've got the choice of square root, and I want the square root of this value. Okay, now you'll see that each of my values here is not rounded to the nearest tenth. I'm going to highlight those, and over here decrease the decimal point, and indeed it will round for me. So now I've calculated my final three values for the measure of variability. So if I want, I can take those and I can paste them back in my data chart so that I have them all there. Or at this point, you're really done with those calculations.